WPGet. Get found. Real people, real solutions.
Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about how we use logos. Some customers provide us with a logo. They get from graphic designers or they design themselves through these free logo creator websites or Canva or something like that. For other clients, we create the logos for them. Now, what I have on the screen in my Illustrator program here at the moment is a stock logo that I've pulled from a stock image website. Now, it's not exactly a logo that I would use, and I'll talk about some of the reasons for that. The first reason being that it is just far too complicated for a logo. Simple logos work. Companies like McDonald's know this, the golden arches. Apple know this with the basic Apple. Any big brands tend to have very, very simple logos. It ties you to their brand as soon as you see that iconography, the font, whatever they tie themselves to, immediately you think of that brand. Now, that doesn't immediately happen for small businesses, but certainly, what works for the big guys works for you as well if you do it well. So what would I do with this particular logo if someone gave me this as a logo? The first thing I would do is I would try and simplify it. And it's going to be a difficult one to do because the complexity of it, it's sort of the cartoony feel to it. It's not exactly a logo that would be easy to use. So I'm going to just firstly ungroup all of this. I'm going to get rid of all the stuff that we don't need. Okay, straight away, I've simplified the logo. Now, all of the wording, the making memories, the one camp at one time, in my view, they are marketing messages, they are marketing campaigns, calls to action, all that sort of stuff. They are not the logo. The logo is the unique thing that links to you. So in another case, we might say, well, okay, the logo might be as simple as this might be our logo. If you want the name to be in the logo, we might make that black and that white. So that could be our logo there. So some people like having the business name or whatever they do as their logo. It sometimes makes sense. Sometimes it's just not necessary. So I'm going to just go back to where I was before with the other simplified logo. So here's the simplified logo. Now, the reason we make it simple is that multiple reasons. One is that it makes it much easier to recognize. It's much easier to scale. Even this one is too complicated. It's got too many lines, too many little circles and dots and dashes. I think this logo is too complicated as well. But let's just say if we zoom down on this, and if we looked at these two side by side, the logo on the right-hand side is quite easy to recognize. The one on the left-hand side is crowded by all the stuff that's barely even readable. So it's confused and it just doesn't make sense to do that. So my recommendation was to keep it simple. Now, the other thing that I was going to talk about here is that the ratio of the logo, so the width to the height. These artboards that I've created here in Illustrator are 50 pixels by 50 pixels. I normally work on a 30 by 30 and then create multiples of that, so 60 by 60, 120 by 120, etc. So it just fits in better with a lot of the requirements for social media, etc. Now, based on this, I would really highly recommend that we also look at the width and height being a square or as close to a square as possible. If your logo was sort of more of a rectangular shape like that, that's still fine. If we scale that down inside the square, it's still okay. It still fits okay inside the square. We've got a little bit of white space at the top and the bottom. The reason I say this is because with social media, when you upload your logos to things like Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, The space that they give you to display your logo is normally a square. So the wider it is, the more white space you have at the top of the bottom, and the smaller your actual logo looks on the screen. The squarer the logo is, the bigger it looks, because it fills the space that they've made available to you. So that's my personal recommendation, is to keep it as as much close to a square as you possibly can. The next part here is the colors. So your style guide that you create for your brand, the logo needs to have the colors that are in your style guide. So once you've decided what colors you're going to use in this logo, you could use that to define your style guide. So if I take my primary, we work on a primary, secondary and accent basis with all the design that we do. So I'm just going to get rid of my stroke on here because I don't want any outlines. If I was to say, look at my first color swatch here, and I say I want to pick up the color of that dark color there, so it's almost black, it's not quite black. For the secondary color, I'm going to pick up this mustardy sort of color here, and for the accent color, I'm going to pick up this peachy color here. So those are my colors that I'll be using. Get rid of that stroke somehow. So then I need to define what those are for you. So if I go here and I look at my fill color, I make sure that this is on RGB, and then I pick this color here. So black is all 0, so this is not quite black. Let's grab the secondary. And my accent. And those are the three colors defined for this brand. So when you have headers and footers and everything, and they use these three colors, they're going to be close to your logo. Now, there's a separate video we have on defining the colors that we use at WPGet. We use a 9-color system where we take each of these three colors and we create 2 slight variations of each of those colors. So they're related to those, but we try and use these as what we call the base colors as often as possible. So that's pretty much what we do with those. Now, so we've covered the composition, so we want it to be simple. We've covered the ratio, so we want to be close to a square as possible, and we've covered the colors that we're going to use. So the next thing we want to talk about is the actual file types and file sizes. In Illustrator here, you can see that what I'm creating, what they call curves or paths. So as I zoom in, I get very smooth lines. I don't get pixelation and big fluffy dots or any blurry bits or whatever, because this is a vector or a path object where it actually paints the image based on the definition of the lines, the colors, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to export these so that you can see what I mean by that. So if I export screens, and I'm going to select my artboard that's got the logo complex and the artboard that's got the logo simple. I don't want the colors for this. I'm just going to export it to a folder, and we're going to have a 1x size or 1x size, which is a bitmap, PNG bitmap, which is 50 pixels by 50 pixels. The 2x is going to be 100 by 100 pixels. The 3x will be 150 by 150. 4x will be 200 by 200. We then look at 2 other formats here, which is the SVG, or Scalable Vector Graphics, which is widely used in websites these days. Things like Canva will accept it, Adobe Illustrator, and it's like what I just showed you in Illustrator, where you can scale those images as big or as small as you want, and they don't lose quality. I also export a PDF, which is the same as the SVG, where it's scalable, and that's for people who don't know how to work with SVG, but they're familiar with the Adobe PDF format. So I export all of these in one go. And here's my export folder where I've got my original file, I've got my one times. Made a mistake there, obviously. Just going to go back and export that again. Look, I unticked that by mistake. So I'm just going to tick that again. Just going to export that again. I'm going to get some warnings because these exist. Okay, there's my files. Now, so I get a 1x of the two that I've exported. If I look at my the details pane, it's a 50 by 50 image. If I look at the 2x, it's a 100 by 100. Go up to my 4x, and I've got 200 by 200. Now, if I look at the SVG, it shows me there's no particular size. Okay, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So if I go to the 4x, for example, which is 200 dots by 200 dots, and I open that up in Chrome, Google Chrome, what I see here is the 200 by 200 image, which looks all right. If I scale that by zooming in on it, see how it looks very, very blurred on the edges, very blocky. And the bigger I go, the worse it looks. Now that's the 200 by 200 size. Let's have a look at the small size, so the 1x size, which is something you might use in your header. We'll open that with Chrome. There it is at 100 by 100. And as I zoom in, look at that, it's just awful. Let's compare that to the SVG, or Scalable Vector Graphic. Okay, there it is in Google Chrome. Big size, no matter how much I zoom, there's no blurry edges, no pixelation. It just scales beautifully, whether it's small or big, it still looks great. So the only other the only other file type that I exported was the Adobe PDF, which is for people who are, designing, maybe shop signage, business cards, or anything like that. You can send them this. And once again, you can scale without losing any quality. So those are the formats that I will export the logo in. And typically what I will do is use, wherever I can, I use the SVG for situations where it's not compatible with an SVG. I will use the closest size in a PNG that I need. So if it's only a 50 by 50, I'd only use the 1x. If it's a 200 by 200 I'll use the 4x. So that's pretty much it. So favour the SVGs for digital work like websites, Facebook, all that sort of stuff. Actually, I'm not sure if Facebook lets you upload the SVGs, but that's something I'll have to check. But all right, so hopefully that makes sense and explains the reasons we do what we do. So firstly, we make sure that we keep this logo simple. We try to keep it as close as possible to a square rather than a rectangle. The colors that we create for our style guide should come from or be used in the logo. And when you export your file types, try and include some different sized PNGs and try to use SVG wherever you can. And what we do is we'll create all this for our client, we zip it all up into a folder, and we give them the zip folder, and then they've got every single type and size that they need, whether they're getting a business card done, a Facebook ad done, or whether they're putting a sign on their building. The artwork in there will be usable for all of those situations.
WPGet. Get found. Real people, real solutions. Call us on 07 3708 1021. Visit us at www.wpget.net.